Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 41 of the Clutch Dump. I am Nicholas Patty, joined by Ben Walther, and we have a combination of automotive and motorsports news to bring to you. This originally was just going to be an automotive episode. However, there has been a lot of racing news in literally the last 36 hours, across IMSA, across NASCAR, and more. So we're going to be covering that, and then we're going to be covering basically anything that was relevant or important in the last couple weeks in the automotive sphere. So make sure to stay tuned for all of it. If you have not already, though, before we jump in to the deep cuts of the automotive and motorsports world, make sure to follow us on all social media and podcasting platforms. We are on all podcasting platforms. So if you're listening to this, you have found us. Hello. Make sure to drop a follow or a subscription, leave a rating or a review, and then follow us on YouTube, subscribe, like the video, and turn on that notification bell. Last but not least, on Instagram, at the Clutch Dump. Make sure to follow us there. Ben, we got a lot of automotive stuff. We got a lot of racing stuff. And I would say we have probably the most exciting NASCAR news that we've had since you and I have done this podcast, realistically.
Since the start of NASCAR, because it's not about NASCAR drivers. So, even though this is supposed to be an automotive episode, we do have some motorsport news.
We make the rules.
Oh, also that. But we think it is relevant to going into this weekend's motorsport shenanigans, and we don't want to cover it next Monday. Are we recording Monday? Monday, question mark?
I assume so.
Monday when we record our usual.
You got to put in that grind, guys.
Episode.
Spring break, it ain't spring break around here.
Absolutely. I am actually going to work the whole time, so hopefully Monday.
Literally, that's all I'm doing is working too. So.
But we have, more IMSA news than anything.
Honestly.
So we will start with the big one, and that is that IMSA is fixing, the balance of performance? Making it worse? Changing it?
Fixing remains to be seen.
They are altering the balance of performance. So they are changing.
They are unbalancing the balanced performance.
This is correct, to make it more balanced performance. So they altered the power, weight, and stint energy allowed for each of the 4 GTP LMDH. Depends on what organization you work for, whatever. It's the same thing. But for the power, so at Daytona, Rolex 24, they were all at 500 kilowatts.
Do you want to translate kilowatts to...
Each? No, not really.
Okay.
Kilowatts, heads up, that's what it is.
So I guess for reference, Daytona was 500. We don't know if that's a lot or a little, but you'll know what the difference is.
Well, they're all going up. So Acura is up to 520, Porsche 517, and the Beamers and the Cadillacs are 513. The weight was 1030 kilograms, which for my American people is 1030 kilograms.
You know what's funny about this?
Use the metric
system. I love how it was all like different cars, different aero packages, different efficiencies, different balances. But they were like, no, same power, same weight, same stint energy. Like, it's just going to be the same across all of them. It's like, but this car has a distinct advantage in this category. It's like, same power, same weight.
Well, they had to start somewhere. Energy.
Fair, I guess. There's really no better starting place.
They have the same hybrid system. They're limited to the same amount of horsepower. They all have the same transmission. They all run the same tires.
Fine, man. Just disprove my point. It's fine.
So
let's move on.
Nick knows nothing.
I know nothing. Indeed.
Weight started at 1030 at Daytona. Acura is up to 1054. Porsche's 1048. BMW 1040. And Cadillac will be the lightest of the bunch at 1038. The stint energy. Now, if you did not watch our Daytona episodes, for starters, shame on you. You're a slacker.
How dare you? But if you're doing the podcast, welcome. Hi.
Hi, welcome. If you didn't watch our Daytona episodes where we talked about the stint energy, so now because the cars are all hybrid and they use the same hybrid system, but they're allowed to use it in different ways, they measure stint distances not off of how much fuel they're allowed to use, but a stint energy in a virtual fuel tank, basically. So instead of measuring liters of fuel, they
kilowatts of energy?
Megajoules of energy.
Oh, duh.
So it's a virtual fuel tank. It's very complicated, but they have torque sensors on the rear axles, and they measure how much power is being delivered. Therefore, they can calculate how much energy is being used in a stint.
What I love about this
maximum stint energy
is I love that of all the people that you would expect to understand sophisticated European car technology, it would be me. But in this particular instance, I am the most like, if it's not an LS and just gas, I don't understand it. Normally it would be you that is like that because you just love your big, gnarly, loud V8s. And I like flat
I'm really
six
into European and Japanese cars. Like, I'll be honest, American V8's kind of overrated. Anyway, so the stint
fact you just said that while looking at me wearing a Dale hat really annoys me.
I know. There's
sacrilegious.
There's a Stroker Camaro.
What is that on your wall? Oh, a Shelby sign? Okay. Oh,
Shelby,
and a Corvette. Oh,
Corvette,
and an SS. Okay.
That's a Mustang. That one's a Mustang. That one's a Corvette. Yeah, but that's an Aston Martin, and that's a fat
Well, we
flag.
can't see that, so I think you're lying.
Anyway, I'm lying. So, stint energy was limited to 920 megajoules at Daytona. Acura is now 917. Porsche is 912. BMW and Cadillac are both 905. That means BMW and Cadillac can theoretically go the shortest distance in a stint. However, that little of a difference, and it could be also because the Cadillac and the BMWs are now the lightest and the least powerful, they could, in theory, go longer. So we should see how that works.
Who do you think is coming out on the better end of this? Who do you think's looking best because of these changes? I honestly
think that... I hate to say this.
I think we're both going to agree if you hate to say it.
Oh. No, I was going to say Porsche. So, I mean, I think Porsche got the best because Porsche makes 3 kilowatts less than Acura, which, by the way, for those of you who are American, that's 4 horsepower.
That's it?
That is 4 horsepower. That's what that difference is. So, it's 4 horsepower. So, they're 4 horsepower down on Acura. However, they do weigh 6 kilograms less than Acura, which I think 6 kilograms does more than 4 horsepower, I think. As well as the stint energy being 912.
Well, and the Porsche's lighter, right?
Right. So it's lighter than the Acura. It's allowed a little less power, but I think the Porsche will make out best. What I'm worried about for the Cadillacs and the BMWs is they are down, so what, that's 7?
I think BMW got shafted on these. I'm going to be honest, because BMW was already slow.
BMW was slow, and we didn't really know how fast they were running, so I don't know if their BOP should have been touched.
Right.
I mean, aside from the fact that they were all given more power, to be fair. There was that. Everyone was given more power, however, everyone's also heavier
in weight,
and down in stint energy. Right. So it's one of those things of they couldn't just leave BMW out.
Well, I mean, they could have increased power, increased weight, but then just left stint energy or some combination of the factors.
Something like that. So I think why they did it, though, is because the BMW and the Cadillac are the same chassis underneath. That
would make sense.
If Cadillac,
they need to be fairly comparable.
If Cadillac got penalized and BMW penalized, and BMW didn't, there'd be a whole pointing fingers thing and all that stuff. So super excited to see.
Speaking of pointing fingers.
So before we get to pointing fingers, I'm super excited to see how this turns out at Sebring in 2 weeks' time. That is not this weekend, but the following, the 16th.
It's actually just a week and a half. Not even a week and a half. It's a week from today.
It's Thursday. Practice starts a week from today, so should be exciting. Now, you remember those Acuras we talked about?
You remember?
You remember
if you watched the race? You remember, a particular manufacturer, but not only that, a particular team within that particular manufacturer.
They did quite well, if I recall.
Ben, would you almost say unfairly quick?
I would say that there was a certain Acura of Meyer Shank Racing that was surprisingly quick. I believe that'd be the number 60 car.
Yeah.
Piloted by Tom Blomqvist and others. And, I would say it was surprisingly quick. And that was the talk of the town for the Daytona. was, hey, why is this particular Acura so quick? And turns out we know because...
Yes, because of Honda.
Because of Honda, which, by the way, I love that Honda absolutely threw this team under the bus.
Meyer Shank's like it said in our contract, you wouldn't rat us out. Honda's like, sorry.
Sucks, dude. So Meyer Shank Racing offset the readings of their Michelin tires to appear to fall within the guidelines and rules for the series, when in reality they were outside the rules. In addition, the offsetting itself is also against the rules. So in English,
go ahead.
That is... They monitor everything in these IMSA races, especially in the GTP class.
It's like Formula One in terms of the level of ensuring the competition is fair.
Right. So this whole balance of performance thing, it's not just power, weight, and stint energy. It's also tires.
It's everything.
It's everything. So one of the things is they monitor, they being IMSA, they monitor your tire pressure. It has to be within X and Y. And apparently Meyer Shank Racing kind of bumped down their X number and ran
softer, stickier,
and ran below the what am I trying to say? Below the threshold, below the allowed minimum PSI. So Nick, do you want to run through what Meyer Shank Racing was given?
Well, so
taken from
in addition to this, because listen, folks, I drove 45 hours round trip to go watch this race. It was the debut of the Porsche 963. And while Acura's tire pressures have nothing to do with Porsche winning or losing the race, we also don't know that it didn't. I'm just kidding. But
we do know.
I was going down there hoping for a very specific result. And within 10 minutes of the race, I turned to my wife, I turned to my brother, I turned to my grandfather. And I was like, holy crap, what is up with that number 60 car? Because there would be a Porsche or a Cadillac ahead of it on the straight. And we're not talking like DRS range, right? They don't even have DRS, but we're not talking a second or two. We're talking like in the next county. Like they're in Georgia, and the Porsche was in Florida at the track. And the Acura would come all the way up, catch up to it, break out of the draft, and without slowing down at all, go right past it. And you're going to say, Nick, that has nothing to do with tire pressures. Well, here's one. Getting out of the corner has something to do with tire pressures. That car, there was something about it. It was just, it ain't right. The math ain't mathing on that one. So from the get-go, I was already like, this is disappointing as a fan to be there and watch, because it unless something broke, the race was over from the start. So that all being said, a little bit of clarification and furthering on what Ben said, Honda apparently just recently discovered in the code, what it was is an engineer went into their data, and after it was read, but before IMSA got it, it was offset to be X value lower. So view it this way, guys. If you're measuring on a measuring cup, imagine scratching out the lines and redrawing the lines to make it look like you have 1 cup of water when in reality you have 3/4, but you've redrawn the lines. So that's basically what they did, is their data would read X number, X PSI, and it would basically add a certain number to that so that when IMSA gets it, it looks like it's within the minimum threshold. So that all being said, Honda found out, and kudos to Honda. They were like, this was our team that we have factory backing. We found out they cheated. Here you go, IMSA. Here's what they did. So kudos to them. Like, a lot of people were saying on Twitter, they think that's why the punishments were not harsher than they were, is because Honda self-reported. So anyways, here are the penalties. So you get 350 points in the championship for winning Daytona. Meyer Shank lost 200 of those. They lose all team and driver IMSA Michelin Endurance Cup points. And so for clarification, you're going to be like, you just said they lost 200. They lose 200 in the full IMSA calendar of the 350 points that they got. There's a separate title called the Michelin Endurance Cup, and I believe it's 4 races: Petit Le Mans, Sebring, Daytona, and the Glen, I think?
Yes.
Where that's a whole separate championship. So some teams will just run the endurance races. Meyer Shank lost all of the points in that category. They lose all the race prize money. The team receives a $50,000 fine. The team and entrant representative, being the owner, Mike Shank, they and he are placed on probation through June 30th of this year. So what that means is very little unless Meyer Shank screws up again. And then he's in big doo-doo. Which, to be fair, I don't think I've, in my lifetime, watched sports car racing and had something as blatant as this, and then seen somebody placed on probation, and then seen them violate probation.
Right.
Like, I don't know what that looks like. So
Right.
we're kind of in a unknown territory. The revocation of the IMSA annual credential and indefinite suspension of the IMSA membership for the team engineer Ryan McCarthy. So, with credit to Meyer Shank, but also not a clean slate, it was a particular engineer that did this.
Right.
However, the fact that Honda had insight into this being the case and found this out, I think it's safe to assume people at Meyer Shank had to have known. And if it wasn't that they knew actively, they could have known and they just chose not to know.
Right.
Okay, so those are the penalties. As a result of the penalties, Wayne Taylor Racing, who finished second at the Rolex 24, also in an Acura, but they didn't cheat. They moved to the lead in the GTP standings due to the point penalty. And the other cars in the GTP class all move up one position. So Meyer Shank is in last in the point standings. That is not the Michelin Endurance Cup. I mean, I guess they're last in that too, but not as a result of a point deduction. They just don't get any points.
Right.
So the finish of the Rolex 24 was like this. They were 4.9 seconds ahead of second place, which was the Wayne Taylor Racing Acura. If you go, man, for cheating, that really wasn't that big of an advantage. There was a caution and the race restarted about 25 minutes from the end. So it was 4.9 seconds in 20 minutes. So, however many laps that is. And then they were 9.6 seconds ahead of the Chip Ganassi Cadillac that was in third. So a bit of a gap, but obviously it's easy to look at that and be like, well, that's not a huge gap if they cheated over 24 hours. But again, all the gap and all the benefit that they had built up got erased because of the late race caution. So if you were to add up, Ben did the calculations. If you take the gap they built up in the last 25 minutes of 4.9 seconds and divided that by the number of laps, they would gain 6 thousandths of a second per lap, which is tiny, granted. However,
but it adds up.
Well, first it adds up, but secondly, that's with the condition that the tires were in, that's with the fuel loads, that's with the kind of end of race condition. That's not that's not the pace that the car was running the entire time. And that's due to a whole host of factors. The car could have been running better at night, and so during the day it wasn't as good. So anyways, but let's just average and say it's 6 thousandths. I think they ran over 800 laps. That 6 thousandths of a second adds up. So it's unfortunate because I think the race, if you look at where the Wayne Taylor car was, the Wayne Taylor car was faster than the Cadillacs, and because of Porsche having mechanical failures, it obviously was ahead of them. But I think on pure pace, it would have been Acura just marginally edging out Porsche.
Right, it would have been much closer.
Oh, 1,000%. I mean, BMW still would have been at the end. However, if you're sitting there and you're like, okay, they cheated, and they got some penalties, but I didn't hear a few things said. They still keep the race win. They still keep the $150,000 worth of Rolex Daytona watches that they receive as trophies in the Rolex 24. Now, Ben and I had this conversation earlier. Ben's like, who cares? It's racing. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter. And I'll give Ben time to further explain if he feels like he needs to.
Okay.
The problem for me is you cheated, and in I'm going to use a law example, okay? So let's say you have someone that you know for a fact committed a crime, but early on in the investigation process, you discovered evidence, and for whatever reason, you didn't handle that evidence properly, and so it's not valid in a criminal case. Every piece of evidence, even if it's true, even if it's proven, that comes as a result of having found that piece of evidence incorrectly, all gets thrown out. It has to be done a different way. So to make this to apply this to the racing situation, any result garnered after cheating in the race, and not just cheating like, oh, they shortcut a pit stop, so here's a 10-second penalty. We're talking every single lap that car ran was an invalid cheating lap. All 800 something. every single second of the
like
24
760.
hours. Okay, yeah. The record was 800, I think.
Right.
Every single second on that 24-hour timer that they were in the car, on the track, or off the track was cheating. I think it's fair to say that everything that they earned as a result, everything, should be gotten rid of, as if the race didn't happen. And my last point on this example is, like I said, if it was a one-time thing, you can penalize that in the moment, and that can be offset. But the only way that Meyer Shank should deserve a reward from the race is from playing within the rules. And considering that no point of the race it's not like they ran, 6 hours of the race and they were within that window.
Right.
And then for 18 hours they were outside, where you could say, okay, well then we'll give 25% points. There is no redeeming it. It's just cheating. And then to be able to keep the trophies from it, and to go down in the history books, I mean, obviously with NASCAR and the Indy 500 and the F1 World Championship Trophy, there's the names etched into the trophies. And there isn't that with the Rolex 24. But those drivers, those team members, are going to have the trophies. They're going to have their names in the history books as winners when they didn't play by the rules. So that's my little rant. That's my soapbox.
My thing about it is the drivers weren't penalized, right? I mean, obviously they lost their points.
No, yeah. Other than the points and
they lost
stuff
their
on
points.
the team.
So the Daytonas, the watches, who gets a watch?
Just the drivers.
Just the drivers?
And probably the team owner, but I know for sure the drivers.
Oh, well then yeah, keep the watches. The drivers won the race. The drivers didn't cheat.
The drivers won the race with machinery that was outside the parameters of the
But they still
sport.
drove the car to a race win.
Ben, they drove a car to the race win that was starting from a position of advantage already.
So that makes it meaningless?
I think so, yes. Because here's the thing, is the lap times that the drivers put in, they kept the car on the track and they went fast. Cool. They
Which
did
is
it
difficult.
in a car that was unable to be fairly judged against its competition. Like, okay, for F1 qualifying.
Right.
Like, if let's say hypothetically the soft tire was not allowed in qualifying and a team went out and set a time on the soft tire. I know it's a different compound, but they also run different tire pressures. It's the closest example I can think of. If Max Verstappen set a fastest lap on softs and then Alonso set a fast lap on mediums, nobody would say, well, that's a completely fair comparison. Alonso had a chance. Granted, I know the Red Bulls is much faster. Whatever.
Yeah,
Put
but
them
it's
in
still
the
impressive.
same car. Right, but you don't get a trophy for being impressive. You get a trophy for
winning the race.
Assuming all these rules are followed, winning the competition. The competition can only exist if rules exist. Because here's the thing. The rules are also what determines the fastest car that completes the most distance wins. So the same rules that say, hey, to finish first you win, are the same rules that say you have to fall within these parameters. And if you play outside the rules, who's to say it's not like golf and finishing last means you win the race?
Right.
Like, they all have to be followed or none of them can be followed. That's my take. And I know nobody listening asked, however you are listening, so you kind of did. That all being said, Meyer Shank Racing released a statement, and I'm going to read it. And I'm just going to say ahead of time, I am going to taint the jury pool. But Ben, I think this statement is not nearly sufficient, and I'm curious to hear how you feel about it. And I just realized I saved it on Twitter, not Instagram.
Oh my gosh.
Listen, at least I have it this time, okay? How many times have I said I have it bookmarked on Twitter?
Every time.
Every time. Okay, here's the statement. You ready?
Them.
Found
Yes.
it. Found it.
Okay.
Quote, we accept the series decision and have taken responsibility. We want to apologize to everyone at Acura, HPD, and all of our partners. We have dealt with this issue internally, and the team member that was responsible is no longer with the organization. We do not want this error to overshadow the tremendous effort that our team, drivers, and all of our partners have put forth to develop this new car. We consider this matter closed and are fully focused on resetting and coming back for the 12 hours of Sebring. Now, real quick. I know I've talked a lot, but to be fair, it's our podcast.
You do that, yeah.
First of all, we accept the decision and take responsibility. You don't have a choice. You have to. That's just how that works. So, okay, I guess. They apologize, obviously. We've dealt with this situation internally. I despise when organizations, race teams, politics, charities, whatever, when they're so vague that really they could have just not said anything at all and it would have meant about the same. Like, for them to say, more specifically the penalties that were taken, I would love to hear it. Now, granted, they said he's no longer with the organization, but I would argue he couldn't be with the organization because he's banned from IMSA, and the only other thing that MSR runs in is IndyCar. So, like, okay, he's probably, whatever. And then the fact it's like, yeah, we know we cheated, but we still did really good. We still did really well, and we won. It's like, well, I might just drink the wax from this candle. I might. I just might. You know, like, it's looking really good right now.
It is true, though.
Ben, you can't win when you cheat. That's it. They're mutually exclusive. Did they finish ahead of the field? Yes. But they did that outside the rules, so it doesn't count.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, vote in the comments on this YouTube video, or if you're listening, just leave a freaking review and let us know where you stand on this. Should Meyer Shank, call to action right here, you ready? Should Meyer Shank deserve or keep the title of race winners and the Rolexes after them having cheated? Let us know. Ben?
Option C, it's racing and we can just watch Sebring. Would you like to talk about some Falcon liveried cars, Nick?
Yeah, basically, I just wanted to include this because I saw it on Instagram. The cars look really cool, so Ben can put an overlay. But Falcon is entering the 24 hours of the Nürburgring with two 992 GT3Rs, and they look absolutely sexy.
They look really good.
Mostly because it's the traditional Falcon livery, but in a non-traditional way, and I'm a big fan. Also, on top of that, there were, speaking of the Porsche 992, and hopefully I saved it, but I don't think I did.
Probably not.
Oh, I did.
Oh, my gosh.
Yes. Okay.
All right, cool.
So, Sports Car 365 reports that the 911 GT3R, the 992, is getting a huge power increase for Sebring. So, these are the stats. And Ben can break it down and give us he can be Sam Collins on F1 TV.
Sure.
So it's getting a 5mm larger air restrictor for the Porsche, and it's now running with a 38mm diameter, and it's the biggest opening that this car has had, period, throughout testing and everything. Let's see. I'm reading through this for the first time. Apparently, the Huracan got some updates. The Ferrari got some updates. Mercedes has gained 15 kilograms of weight.
Good.
So it's not actually saying in here the horsepower numbers that we're expected to have in the Porsche as a result of this, but hopefully it makes a difference. I mean, I don't know if horsepower was Porsche's problem. Like, I mean,
horsepower is everyone's problem.
Ben, obviously, but I mean, like Daytona was the problem that the Porsche was getting annihilated on the banking.
Yes. It was a problem.
I feel like they could have just made it lighter, and then the power to weight improves, and then it's a little bit less weight in the corners, and you solve that problem anyway. But we'll find out. We'll see. Also, Sebring's not a track aside from the back straight. It's less of a track where horsepower matters than it is at Daytona. So I feel like they're trying to rectify a Daytona problem for the Sebring race. Whatever. Let me know in the comments. Ben.
Yes.
Do you want to talk about some F1 drivers?
I would. And with those F1 drivers, we are moving on to some NASCAR news. Yes, I know you're confused. So am I. And starting off with one Iceman, Kimi Räikkönen. He will be running the Project 91 car once again for Team Trackhouse. Except this time he will be running it at Circuit of the Americas in Austin.
Site of his last Formula One win with Ferrari, which I was there.
20.
Kind of cool.
When was that?
18. And 18? I'll send this to Ben, but that's his car livery, and it looks smoking
the
hot.
Business.
Yeah.
So, and then joining him on the track will be Jordan Taylor, who is racing for Hendrick Motorsports in the number 9 Napa Camaro as a replacement for Chase Elliott. And then also one Jenson Button. Yes, that Jenson Button.
I love how 2 of the 4 people involved in the Garage 56 program, like Hendrick was like, damn, Jordan, you were really fast in that Garage 56 car.
You were good.
Drive?
Can we borrow you?
And then Jensen, after driving the Garage 56, is like, I really like this. You know what? I got to get me a NASCAR ride.
Yeah. So it was.
So he'll be driving 3 races in the number 15 car, which I believe is a Ford.
Don't know. I didn't check.
I'll have to look it up. I think it's a Ford.
But yeah, Jensen will be doing 3 races starting at COTA in that number.
The 15 is a Ford
car.
Yeah.
15 is a Ford. Okay, interesting.
It's the Rick Ware racing car. So.
Okay, but I'm assuming that underneath they pretty much transfer over Ford and Chevy.
No, they should. But I was just sitting here and I'm like, all right, Kimi in a Chevy, Jordan in a Chevy. As a Chevy owner, I'm like, all right, come on, give me the bet. No, it's all right.
Not getting that one.
You Ford owners can have them.
Nick, I think we're going to skip this Mercedes one real quick so that we can talk about NASCAR Aero Package, just so we can kind of blend NASCAR to NASCAR news.
I am going to... Why don't you go ahead and start reading that? I'm going to screenshot and send you images that a NASCAR mechanic who's also a IMSA mechanic who was also an IndyCar mechanic at one point. I follow him on Twitter, and he basically goes through and gives tech debriefs and posts really informational images. I'm going to text these to you while you start reading so that you can then, if you want, refer to them and then post them.
So NASCAR is updating the aero packages on their next-gen cars in order to improve short track and road course performance. This includes changes to the diffuser and floor, and most importantly, or most visibly notable, the rear spoiler changes. So for short track and road course, they will go to a 2-inch tall, 58-inch wide spoiler. For intermediate tracks, a 4-inch tall, 60-inch wide, and then for super speedways, 7-inch tall, 60-inch wide.
7-inch tall?
That's a big boy.
That is a chonker.
That is a spicy wing on the back of a NASCAR. So, yeah, hopefully this improves the next-gen car. It's, I don't know. I'm excited that there's aero talk about NASCAR, and it isn't talking about a Charger Daytona.
Did you ever, Ben, as a wee lad growing up, investigating aerodynamics and downforce, did you ever anticipate having a conversation about NASCAR aerodynamics that wasn't a 1970 Superbird?
No, I just genuinely thought they were just going to get more slippery and more slippery and more slippery, and we were just going to have 300-mile-an-hour banks just running laps.
I don't know if you want to check your text, but I don't know if there's anything... because you are so mechanically minded, even if it's random, that you want to add in terms of commentary.
I saw these.
Okay.
So, wow, that diffuser is incredibly noticeable, for starters. And these will be up on the screen. So if you're watching on YouTube, which you should be, hi YouTube, I'll put these pictures up, and you can clearly see from the side how big that diffuser is, and you can see underneath the car those strakes by underneath the floor by the front wheels. So what's
the difference between the skirts and the strakes?
So entirely not much. So the skirts are...
They look like skirts off a ground effects car.
That's basically what it is.
Okay.
Yeah. So basically it is for downforce, cleaning up the air underneath the car, and then just making the car more stable is what it does.
Last bit of NASCAR news I forgot to include is
gosh.
Was it Martinsville?
No idea.
Yes, Martinsville is, they've removed the entire section of wall that Ross Chastain rode.
Yes, and they're preserving it.
Yes, and he was there and he signed it, so they're preserving that wall. The Hail Melon, apparently, is what it's called.
Which is a great name.
It's horrible. I despise it.
I despise you. Anyway.
Well, we know that. But they're preserving it, so there's that. There you go.
That all for NASCAR?
That's about it, yep.
Perfect. That means we are going to move on to some automotive news. And we're going to start
with... we have one bit of F1 news.
Mercedes is cranky at their engineer, and he told him to fix the car or he's out.
Now in automotive news. All right.
Heads up, if you haven't watched F1, the car's not good this year, and they told their head engineer, fix it, or we'll find someone else. Now, this is a piece of news that is quite old, but because of scheduling reasons, we skipped an automotive episode.
And because I'm a Porsche guy.
Well, but this was supposed to be automotive news on the podcast like 3 weeks ago, but it got skipped. And Nick wanted to bring it back up for some reason, even though it's not that great looking of a car. Porsche, a couple weeks ago, released what they're calling the 357 Heritage, which is based...
Get it?
I get it. So it, I guess, looks like a 356, supposedly. So it is a 356 modern-looking body placed on top of a Cayman GT4 RS. Now, I have multiple problems with this.
Why?
But I would like to hear Nick's non-problems with this first.
Whoa. Who assumed I wouldn't have a problem with it?
It's a Porsche. I've never heard you talk bad about a Porsche. Other than the fact that there's not enough of them.
The 924 is underpowered?
Well, so is the 944 Turbo Cup. So, anyway, Nick, your thoughts on the 357 Heritage?
I want to see it with actual lights.
No, okay, the headlights are the only part that I like about it.
There aren't any.
No, there are. Someone didn't watch the video. So,
no, of course I didn't watch a video. I don't got time for that. I watch Law and Order SVU. Come on.
Oh my gosh, Nick, you need to get out less and get on the internet more, okay? So there will be pictures on the screen here if you're on the YouTubes, and as you can see from this front 3/4 shot, there is what looks like stickers of where headlights would be. That's actually a bunch of holes poked in the shape of a headlight, and there is a headlight behind it. And it shines through.
Can't be efficient, but it looks cool.
It's the coolest. Well, it's not a real car, so
right. That's my problem with it.
So problem number one, it's not a real car. Problem number two is
you're so negative.
It's a modern. No, Nick.
You're so negative all the time.
You, as a Porsche Heritage person, should agree with this.
Okay. Oh.
So it is based on the 356.
Correct.
Which never came with a flat six.
Correct.
And was rear engined.
Is this not?
This is based on a Cayman GT4 RS. This is mid-engined. It's flat six and mid-engined.
Yeah, no, I have a problem with that.
That's like, don't get me wrong. Here's the thing. I think if it didn't have...
Don't get me wrong. Here's the thing.
Well, like, I do think it could look good. I think if they debuted it in one color and it didn't have turbofans on it...
Oh, I love the turbofans.
No, the turbofans look great, but I think if it had, like, normal car wheels on it, like non-race car wheels on it, I think it would look gorgeous. But the problem is I think they tried to make it, like, too futuristic and not heritage-y enough. And, like, also it's, like...
Well, refer back to the part where it's not a real car. If it was a real car, I'm sure it would be.
Well, actually, apparently it runs. It just doesn't drive. Like, there's just no interior. But, like, my thing is, like, the purpose of the 356 was it was a functional sports car. That was its thing. That is why the Beetle, the people's car, was rear engine.
Preach.
You
take on those Porsche engineers, damn it.
Well, no, I'm just saying the reason why they're rear engined is so that you can have a back seat and a frunk.
Yes.
That's why it's there. So the fact that this, in homage to the 356, the start of Porsche road cars, doesn't have a front
I'll be
or
honest,
back seats.
I think it should be rear-engined. Obviously, it's not like that's something hard for Porsche to do. Secondly, I think it should. I mean, if they were going to make a production car, I think they could easily make this fit into their lineup. Like if they were going to make a full production car, the 357 is what the 912 was to the 911. But even below the Cayman. The Cayman is your mid-engine in extreme trim. It's probably the most out of the package, except for the GT3 RS. You have the 911 line. That's fine. And then you have your family vehicles, the Panamera, the Cayenne, Macan.
All that stuff.
You have literally the cheapest fabric seats, just old school 357. And it comes with a four-cylinder. And it could be a four-cylinder turbo or four-cylinder hybrid turbo.
So, you know what I want this to be? Is you're exactly right. Now, here's the problem. Is that...
Like, give me fabric seats and a little 4 or 5-speed manual and some cool vintage gauges. Like,
so, what I think this should be is you take a base 911. Like, Base. As
Yes.
zero options.
Like,
no options.
No Carrera.
Like, no. Like, I'm talking, you take a silver 911, it's got black fabric seats in it.
The 16-inch wheels or whatever.
Right. And you take flat 6 out,
Yep.
insert 718 motor. Turbo 4.
Oh, the base 718 motor.
Base
I was
718.
like, the 718, like, it runs a 4-liter.
No. The base 718
Yeah.
Boxster Cayman motor. The turbo flat 4. Put that in there.
I think would be so sick.
Keep the manual, basic seats.
I would-
and it's
While
like,
I
no.
understand your 911 point, I think it needs a different chassis. I think it needs to be a smaller chassis.
So I would agree, but the problem is like,
Not cost effective.
well, the problem is that the 356 never lived in conjunction with
Right.
with another Porsche. It was just, well, there was obviously like the 550 and like all
Right,
like the
right,
race
right.
cars. That
Yeah.
stuff exists, but it was just Porsche made the 356 in tractors, and that was it. And then it was replaced by the 911,
Right.
and then the 911 got a baby brother that is the Boxster Cayman.
Right.
So trying to have a like low range rear engine car, so it's like, okay, but to make it cost effective, it's like, oh, base interior, but it's like, oh, at that point just buy a Cayman. Like, so I would love for this to exist. I do think it could look really cool. It just has a couple styling cues that I'm not super about. I think the headlights look awesome. I think the side profile is great.
I think the rear, I know what they're trying to do with the textures. They need to make it smaller so that it actually looks like the rear grills.
Yep.
And then it would be so cool. It would be so cool to have. So you know how the modern Porsche design cues are like you have like the gap or the hole in the bodywork, and then you have like a lot of the light design is the shadows of the imprint or the indentation, and then you have the LED or whatever that goes through it. It'd be so cool. You know how the 356 had those tiny little oval lights? Imagine a divot in the body that's like that, but you have either straight across or in that oval, the LED like you have on the center of the 992, that really thin. Like, something like that would look so cool. And the other thing I want is I want the exhaust to come clean out of the bumper like it did on the 356.
That was the other thing I wanted to bring up, is this car, if they're going to do it, so if you look at the rear three-quarter shot, which I'm assuming you're looking at,
Yeah.
the cutout under the fender,
Not a
I don't
fan.
think they should have that. I
Correct.
think
That
this
should
car,
just be continuous.
well, not only that, I think they should actually narrow the car. Because this is based on a GT4S, which is a bit wider than a normal Boxster Cayman.
Or a normal 911 if you're going
Or
to
a
use the
normal
same
911. So I think they should narrow it, and I don't think that these cars should come with splitters or diffusers.
No,
they should,
it should
they
literally be.
wrap around.
While Porsche loves to make sport models, they
Right.
like on this, if they, and here's the other thing, where we were talking about it being under a Cayman or a Boxster, here's the advantage, is with this, you go back to having the rear seats and the frunk, and then you can have a car that's, oh, you can't afford a 911, but you don't want a two-seater. This is the only option. Like, that's literally it.
You know, you know what else they could do? You know what else they could do? I didn't intend for this to be this long of a rant.
I actually
but
like building
think
our
it-
own car.
I think it should be, because here's what else they could do.
Put some narrower wheels on it.
You're familiar
I think so.
with a car called the 911 Sport Classic, correct?
Yes.
Gorgeous car. Great car. Outstanding car. Great. We also have the 911R, which
And we
I think
also
is
have the Targa Heritage, which is gorgeous.
the Targa Heritage, and we've got the Speedsters, which are gorgeous. I think this style of Heritage, fully rebodied, not tweaked, not it has
No, of
the
course.
tail, it's got the fully rebodied. Could you imagine a sport like in a 4-liter 9,000
I got one
RPM
better.
flat six, rebodied as a 356? You can only buy them in like a cream with
Well, I
brown
was
interior.
going to say, I
like-
was going to say very different. And I was going to say,
Oh.
imagine everything we just talked about: the fabric seats, the 4-cylinder, all that. But because the 356 is where the Speedster originated, you make this car in a Speedster with the tonneau cover in the back, the Speedster low-raked windshield. That would be sick, and it would still, or actually no, that would be a 2-seater, and that's fine. That's how it was.
Right.
And then what I was going to say is if someone wants, this is where it's like, God, if money was no object, this platform, Porsche could so easily make their special editions. Here's what you do. You have 550 Sport Classic, 718 Sport Classic, and it's the same chassis, the 4-cylinder motor, but you make those cars rebodied heritage, but using the 357 platform. That would be so cool.
So that is what I was about to bring up, is actually if they wanted to do this, a 550 recreation would be the business. And
in terms of people listening, they're like, well, then we're like, why not just make that anyway? They don't need to make a 357 to do that. I think it'd be very cool and very effective. Imagine if they could make 357. Again, I keep iterating, but your fabric seats, more plastics, maybe not even an infotainment screen. Maybe it's just analog buttons, old digital,
How dare
AM,
we have
FM.
buttons in a car?
Right, AM, FM, practical gauges. Like, I am talking as cheap as Porsche can make it, but it's true to what the 356 was. They can make that as a 30 grand car. You could have a 30 grand Porsche in the line, because a base Cayman and a base Boxster are what? I mean, they got to be more than 30.
I think they're like 40, 42.
Right. And if you're like, well, why would it be cheaper than a Cayman or a Boxster? Why wouldn't they just make those the cheap ones? They're two-seater, convertible, or mid-engined. Like, they're supposed to be the sportier cars. The 911 is the flagship.
Right.
Dude, it makes me so upset that they wouldn't make one. Like, now I want to go fabricate one. Not that I can. I want you to go fabricate one for me.
I can. Can we talk about its sister heritage vehicle real quick? This
Yes, and you need to, when you put up the graphic, you need to find the one in the Porsche livery, like the.
Okay, so this is so there's a vehicle called the ID Buzz. I'll put a picture up of it here. It's a new electric Volkswagen bus. Super cool. I'm actually really excited to see him on the road. I think
I would own one.
Cool. I absolutely would own one.
I want to tow the Turbo Cup with one and put it in black.
Absolutely, but Porsche, to go along with their 357 heritage, rebodied an ID Buzz to give it this cool, swoopy, like, bullet train, futuristic body. And it is to kind of pay homage to the 1960s race service Volkswagen buses that Porsche used. There'll be a picture of an old one here. And actually, a couple Porsche teams have actually gotten ID Buzzes, the production vehicle, and put the old, like, dark red Porsche
with the white
livery
top and the white,
which is super cool. I think that thing is super sick. Here's the thing, though. It should be a Volkswagen and not a Porsche.
I agree.
Porsche shouldn't sell vans, but, like, you should totally be able... I think this should be one of those things where it's like, if they did make the 357 heritage, if you can show Volkswagen... You could buy both. If you show Volkswagen your 357 heritage order, like, you can buy it in the Porsche livery.
Like with the Safari, where they do all the retro...
Right, but only if you bought a 357, and it's from Volkswagen.
I got one better. Porsche puts in a deal where basically, if you buy the car, they split the profits with VW. But if you go buy the 357 550 Sport Classic, part of what you pay for is the Buzz and the open-top trailer. You get all of it as awesome. One package. And
that'd be super cool.
You could pay $1 million for all three of them, but they're all handmade. Like, you only get one when one's ordered. There was no others made. Like, that would be...
That'd be super cool.
I mean, and then it would be cool if Mercedes did it with the SLR and then the Mercedes hauler, but, whatever. More automotive news. And speaking of something that's not heritage... we have
Volkswagen products. We have
still a Volkswagen product, but
still a Volkswagen product. Yes. We have we have the Aventador replacement. Now we haven't seen the actual car. We've seen pictures of the patent or whatever you want to call it. We've seen drawings of it, and they have announced the drivetrain for it, which I think is one of it is the coolest thing Lamborghini has done in the past 20 years, because it's super innovative, it's super interesting, it's crazy new.
I don't like that you said that.
What, in the past 20 years?
Yeah, I don't like that you said that.
What is cooler than a tri-motor V12 that revs to 9,500 RPM that they've done the past 20 years?
A Lamborghini that looks slightly rebodied and gently reminds me of a original Countach.
Do you like the new Countach?
I don't like it more than the old one. I don't like it more
I'll
than
give
a
you
lot
that
of new cars. But I
That's fine.
I think it is the coolest thing Lamborghini's done probably in my lifetime. Like,
That's
yes,
impressive since you're older than Lamborghini.
More than the Sesto Elemento, more than the Reventon, more than all that. I think
Really?
the Countach is... Do you like the Sesto Elemento?
The Sesto, I would do horrible things for Sesto Elemento. It is the coolest Lamborghini ever built in the modern era.
I would take a Diablo GT1 over a Sesto Elemento.
So the Aventador replacement drivetrain has been released, and it is a tri-motor hybrid V12. It makes 1,001 horsepower. What that means is it has a V12, a 6.5-liter brand new V12. It is not from the Aventador. New block, new rotating assembly,
which
new
is shocking.
valve train,
we know.
New everything. Lamborghini is building a new V12. It's impressive. Whole new V12. Naturally aspirated makes 814 horsepower at 9,250 RPM and redlines at 9,500 RPM. It is the lightest and most powerful V12 Lamborghini has ever produced. Now, the interesting thing is
it only took 80 years. Okay,
it only took them 30 years. It is flipped 180 degrees of the Aventador motor. Now, there will be some pictures up here if I'm cool. So what this means is the Aventador V12 actually ran... It was facing backwards of what you think it would be. The transmission ran forwards. So the transmission ran forwards, and then it ran a drive shaft back to the rear end and a drive shaft forward to the front axles. This is flipped the correct way for a mid-engine car, which is belts are on the front end between the motor and between the motor and the driver, and then the bell housing where the transmission hooks up is on the backside. Now, speaking of that transmission, it is something I have never seen done before. So it is a longitudinal V12. So the V12 is front to back, and then it is a transverse 8-speed dual clutch, which means the transmission is this way.
So it's almost an O2 Monte Carlo.
It is, if they flip the engine sideways, yes, it would be an O2 Monte Carlo. So the transmission is sideways like a front-wheel drive car, or like an MR2.
Like a Monte Carlo, yeah.
Like a Monte Carlo. But the engine is front to back like a proper vehicle. So I don't know how they did that, but the reason that they did it...
Well, they're Italian, so it may not actually work.
But talking points. Number one, that means it moves the center of gravity to completely in between the wheels because there's no transmission hanging off the back of the car. The other thing is you may have noticed I said 8-speed dual clutch, which if you have ever driven an Aventador, it's a horrible car. Like, they're not good. That single-speed... or that single clutch automated gearbox.
Can't relate. I've never driven one.
Single clutch automated gearbox is not good. It is very aggressive. It's not smooth. It's very not $500,000 flagship supercar. So this should be incredibly impressive. Now, those electric motors, because this is the first hybrid normal production model. Obviously, we had the Scion, whatever it's called. Cayenne, I think. I don't know.
We had the Lamborghini Cayenne with its...
Right. So it was a hybrid, but it was just a hybrid Aventador. This is different. So this has two motors on the front axle. They weigh 41 pounds each, which is incredibly light for what they do. So, and that means that they have torque vectoring. And what that means is when you go around a corner, they can spin the outside wheel faster and the car turns faster, which is good because it's an
not
Aventador.
as cool as the GT3 RS.
Okay, so... And then it has one electric motor on the transmission, that transverse 8-speed in the back, and it acts as the starter. And the other thing is that 8-speed does not have reverse. The front motors operate reverse.
You know what this is reminding me of?
Which makes the transmission lighter.
This reminds me of the whole
Nothing
Ferrari...
is like this.
No. This reminds me of the whole Ferrari FF crap where there's two different trannies and it's like something operates the front, something else operates the rear. How much do you want to bet we're going to have a recall where it's like, I can't put my car in reverse. The front motors aren't reacting properly because, we decided to not put it in the transmission. I'll bet money on it. I'll bet money.
A lot of hybrids actually do this now. And the fact that EVs work should not be a concern. So no, let's be honest, it's an Audi.
And let's be honest, that's a VW.
This is true.
This is really a V12 Volkswagen Beetle. That's what this is.
Right. So supposedly the whole car will weigh less than an Aventador, even though it's a hybrid now. And the reason
how much will it weigh?
They haven't said. They just said less than an Aventador.
Okay. How much does an Aventador weigh?
The battery, like 8,000 pounds, I think. So no, but I do think they're like 3,800 pounds. But the battery is tiny. It's only 3.8 kilowatt hours, which for reference, a Model S Plaid is 100 kilowatt hours. So it's tiny, which means a wall outlet can charge the battery from dead to full in 30 minutes. Or if they're using regen off of that third motor on the transmission, when the vehicle is running, when that V12 is running, it can charge it from dead to full in 6 minutes.
Bro, no shot. Someone's going to have a Lamborghini.
Plugged into a wall outlet?
I will... Like, he's going to pull out his iPhone fast charging block, and he's going to be like, I got to plug in my car real quick.
Second, I got to plug in my $750,000.
And then he unplugs it, and he wraps it around his hand and puts it in his backpack.
So that is the Aventador replacement. They haven't said when they're going to unveil it, but it should be really impressive. There's been a couple people who have seen a finished product, because apparently the car is done. It's just in testing, and apparently exterior good, interior worlds better. So
quick question, because we're running on about an hour, do you want to do auction results, because that just recently, that happened last weekend, and then maybe cover the Electrify America and Maserati stuff
in a later episode? I would be perfectly down for that. So if you are on Instagram in the car world whatsoever, you will have seen pictures of a bunch of pretty cars sitting on some grass, and that would be because Amelia Island was this past weekend. If you don't know what that is, it's a big car show, and there's auctions and a lot of rich people walking around who aren't
big boys with big toys.
Exactly. So there was 5 different auctions going on: Bonhams, RM Sotheby's, Gooding, and another one, Broad Arrow, and one more that I cannot remember the name of. But we had a list of the 10 most expensive cars sold, and there's a theme you'll find. So 10th most expensive car sold was a 365 GTB4 Spider. That is a Ferrari Daytona, for those of you that don't speak Ferrari. And it sold for $2.535 million. In 9th place, a car that I actually find quite attractive, a 1953 Maserati A6 GCS 53 Spider. Didn't know that was a thing till now. And it sold for $2.59 million. In 8th place, a car I was actually surprised to see up here at this price level. I did not know that these were this expensive. A 1990 Ferrari F40. I did not know that F40s were this expensive because it sold for...
It's no disrespect. It's kind of stupid, if we're going to be honest. Beautiful car. Amazing. Cool.
Outstanding.
Is it? Does it deserve to be on this echelon? No.
I mean, its predecessor, which we will get to in a bit, I think does. So the F40 sold for $3.085 million. Now, a 1967 Ferrari 275 GTB4 sold for $3.525 million. A 53 Ferrari 250 MM Spider Series 2 sold for that same $3.525 million. And that F40's predecessor, an 85 Ferrari 288 GTO, sold for $3.965 million.
The GTO is a cooler car. it's still hard to reconcile that they're pulling that much. I know that's what they go for. It's just still so, because here's the thing: is the 288 GTO, while beautiful, doesn't. It's never I've never seen one and been to myself if I just had to guess how much that was, I would guess that much, because it doesn't.
Well, I think the problem that the 288 GTO has it looks a lot like a 308 or a 328.
Well, and it's looks
got
like
a lot of similar...
every other 80s car, really. That's a supercar.
Right. So it's one of those things that if you parked an F40 and a 288 next to each other...
Which one looks more expensive?
Absolutely. The F40 is
right.
way more expensive. It's got a wing on it, and it's carbon fiber, and it's blah, 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 blah. But I'm glad to see that the 288 GTO is appreciated, because I feel like it's kind of a forgotten Ferrari. I feel like everyone's always like, La Ferrari, Enzo, F50, F40. Now... In fourth place, a 1930...
I think this next one is more... well, not the next one. The one after that is even more stupid, but continue.
A 1931 Duesenberg Model J for $4.295 million. I do like seeing how these 20s and 30s cars, pre-war cars, go for, because I think pre-war cars is a dying... Like, I don't think many people... Especially our age or like our parents' age, like pre-war cars. So I think it's one of those things of like they're going up in value, but I think just in a couple of years, just no one will be able to resell them for that because no one will want them for that.
Right.
Now, in third place, a 1995 Ferrari F50 sold for $5.06 million.
Which is stupid, no disrespect, because 917s go for $5 million. And if you're going to tell me that an F50 is worth that, not even close.
Well...
Also,
in fairness,
it's not cooler or better than a 288 GTO, and then I've always liked the F40s more, but I understand that they're fairly different. But
right. In fairness to the F50, it is a very cool car. It's a very rare car.
Right.
It's more rare than an F40.
Right.
So, but is it $5.06 million worth of rare? I don't know.
Well, and not just 5.06. Is it $2 million more than an F? Is it worth almost double an F4? No.
Right. Is it twice the driving experience of an F40? I don't know that it is.
And it's not twice as rare either. I mean, it's more rare, but it's not twice as rare.
Not twice as rare. In second place, a car that I actually did not know sold for this much money. I know that they were in the millions. I did not know that they were at $5.34 million. And that is a 2010 Pagani Zonda Revolution Edition. Here's the thing. I have a very soft spot for Paganis. I think they are gorgeous. I know a lot of people don't like them. They are seen as like, oh, I don't want to buy a Bugatti or a Ferrari or whatever. I like them because like they're pretentious and it's like, oh, I didn't want to buy a Bugatti or a Ferrari or whatever.
I think
they're works of art.
Is Paganis are a work of art, and it is like, what could the extreme of utter craftsmanship look like in an automobile? Like, every part of it is just meticulously handmade.
I mean, so Paganis is one of those things, and like, it's crazy to me that we're comparing Paganis to Ferrari F50s, but like,
I would take a Pagani over an F50.
Absolutely. All day of the week.
Every day of the week.
Every day of the week. Every day of the year, in fact. But like, a Pagani is like, it's artwork. You know that every one of them was handmade. You know that Horatio looked at that car and sat in it and was like, yep, that one stitch in this seat is wrong, redo it. It's, the Paganis are just looked at by the people who build them differently. They're looked at in the way that like high-end furniture and houses and boats and planes are. Well, whereas like Ferrari, you buy a Ferrari for you buy it for the red, to be honest.
And the yellow shield on the side.
Right. You buy it for the heritage. You buy it for the prestige, for the driving experience.
This is what it really comes down to is name another brand that unveils their car in a National Science and Technology Museum that looks like the Sistine Chapel. Like, just name one. Just come up with one. That's all I'm asking.
Right.
No, you can't. Because Pagani is like the Pagani Utopia can be unveiled or shown off in a place that looks like the Sistine Chapel with Andrea Bocelli playing, and somehow it has the same natural beauty and impact on you as it does overlooking the fields of Tuscany with cows that make Parmesan cheese. Like, it is like the same impact of wow, this is beauty. Wow, this is beauty. What are you looking at? A Pagani in a church, and then the Italian countryside.
Right. Have you ever seen one?
I have.
A Pagani?
I've seen
Zonda or
a Zonda, and I've seen a Huayra. They were both at Goodwood.
Yeah.
Because Goodwood had a field, the Festival of Speed, literally right inside the main gate. And it was like year by year from like 92 to like 2010 or something. And it was like Bugatti Veyron, McLaren F1, Pagani's on, like all what's the 90s Jaguar supercar, the really big
XJ220.
Yeah, like that, and like Carrera GT, and it was like
all the heavy hitters. Today.
Yeah.
Speaking of heavy hitters, the most expensive car sold this past weekend is a 1962 Ferrari 250 GT short wheelbase California Spider, which sold for $18,045,000.
So before we go, I got a question.
Answer.
And then I have an answer to the same question. But out of this list, money, no object, what car do you take?
Zonda. No question.
I hate that you said that.
Well, here's the thing. Which one... I mean, if I was going to own one, not the Zonda. If I have to drive one, Zonda, for sure.
I still disagree, even with that nuance.
If I have to own one... 288 GTO or the Daytona, I think.
Wow, all of your picks. I don't even.
What are you picking? Are you going to say F40?
No, not.
What? What are you talking about?
The 53 Ferrari 250 Spider.
Oh yeah, okay.
Beautiful. Yeah. Like, give me that little dinky 4-speed and the little small displacement motor. Just
back in the 4-cylinder days. So that was some insane stuff sold at that auction, and I mean there was also Porsches and Lamborghinis.
I was going to say those are the one auction where a Porsche 959 doesn't even get a second look. Like, you don't even bat an eyelash.
A Porsche 959 that sold for $1.7 million was the 24th most expensive car there. So that's how this was. We do have some electric car news that we will leave for next time because that's going to do it for this one. As Nick said at the top of the show, make sure you go follow us on social media at The Clutch Dump, whatever platform you're listening to this on, whether it's Spotify, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Pandora, Apple, and Google Podcasts. It doesn't matter. We are there. Make sure you follow. Make sure you comment down below, leave a rating, leave a review. It helps us so much, and we appreciate every single one of you. If you're watching this, hi. On YouTube, make sure you subscribe, make sure you turn on post notifications, make sure to like and share the video, comment down below whatever Nick's question was earlier, answer that.
Is it fair that Meyer Shank still gets the race win in the Rolexes?
Yeah, that one. And that's going to do it for episode 41 of The Clutch Dump. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. We will see you next time.